Well, good morning, John. How are you?
Good, Ron. And you?
I'm good. I'm still wondering about where we're going in the world today with Orange Julius and the things that are happening. And we have a guest today, and
we do. A good friend of mine. I want to address one little quick note, make a quick apology because I don't think as fast as I can. I mean, I can't speak as fast as I can think. So last week I put my foot in my mouth big time, and just to all my Greek Orthodox relatives, including Father Makarios, who sat here, all my cousins who were pissed at me, and everybody else that's Greek, I said that we missed a week due to Ash Wednesday being celebrated, which Orthodox don't celebrate, Catholics do.
Yes.
And although we're on a week differential with the calendars, we're a week behind. I couldn't think fast enough why we didn't broadcast, or if that's the right word, tape a show.
Yeah.
And I blamed it on, well, we must have Ash Wednesday too, so I'll just say that we took it off. We don't have one. Sorry, folks who are Greek Orthodox understand that better than I do. But I was just misspoken.
Well,
I do that every week, right?
No, you don't. I mean, well, let's just comment on that. I mean, we were talking about stuff. We had been kind of in a little bit of a heated exchange, and we were trying to explain ourselves. But I do want to say something about Father Makarios. In the Catholic Church today, there is a Catholic priest named Makarios with the C instead of the K, and so this is his feast day, and so I'll ask him to forgive you on behalf of the Father.
Thank you. Yeah, if I can't get the Pope Leo, I'll take that.
Yeah, take a saint anytime you can.
Okay, if you hear a little bit of laughter in the back, and sitting to my right is a fella that I knew first on that magical site called Facebook. I don't know.
Never been there. Well, I never have.
Good for you. But, it's been the ruination of many a boy, the ruin of many a child. Is that the way that song lyric goes? But Facebook, we all had friends on there. Then it all got what it became. But among the people that I followed way back a long time ago, we followed each other, was a guy named CT Phantom Band on there. And he was always like on the same coordinated page as I was with thoughts and things I put on there, and vice versa. He was writing like spiritual tomes, if you will, and all this kind of cool stuff. And we'd like. Didn't know the fellow. And one day I went into Feldman's Deli and was filled up on some pastrami or something, walking out the door. And I got approached by this handsome dude. And he goes, "Hey, are you John Saltas?" And I go, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I'm CT Phantom Band." I go, "You're shitting me. How did you?" And he knew my face, I guess, from my photograph in the Facebook land. And that begat our knowing each other in person. This is 8 or 9 years ago. I don't know how long it was. It doesn't matter. We've stayed in close contact since and learned right away. I knew it already that he's a former U.S. Marine. I'm going to back that up. There is no such thing as a former U.S. Marine, I don't believe. I think they're always a U.S. Marine.
Right.
And he can tell us if that's the case or not. He was in Vietnam. He'll tell us all about that. The affinity was that, as we mentioned here before, my brother was in Vietnam 19 months, 65, 66. My other brother was there for about 3 years in the Air Force, B-52 stuff. Cousin, Vietnam Marine, about 67, 68, somewhere around there, 4th Marines. And another cousin, artillery in the Army. Another cousin, tunnel rat. I mean, it just goes endless. And so I've always had, and you do as well, Ron, the affinity for veterans and so on. And so there was kind of a bond there. Then we found out we bond politically too, which was really great. So if you don't mind, I'm going to introduce you to Clark.
Okay.
And he can explain why you went by the word CT Phantom Band, why you called yourself that. I'm sure we'll get to part of it, and maybe start there. But as a reference point to that today. Today's March 11th, 2026.
An important day.
An important date. And March 11th, 1969, Clark had been in Vietnam perhaps less than 2 weeks. A new guy, FNG, I think they called him. Fucking new guy. Didn't really know his way around the bush or whatever. Was ambushed that day. His patrol unit was ambushed that day. And he can talk about that as well, but that's the 57th anniversary of where you were when you were 19 years old on that day. And Clark is a South High graduate. He had a great buddy he can talk about. You were in school at the same time?
Yeah, we graduated. We're both 68 graduates, yeah.
So, Clark, thank you for coming, and appreciate you because you're such a good human being.
Thank you, John and Ron and Bill.
Yeah, Bill. Go ahead.
Um,
CT
well,
Phantom Band. Where did,
I got
what's it?
the CT Phantom Band. There was a couple of things that played into that. One of them was that the original band that I was in before I went to Vietnam, we were called Walden Pond because we were way into Henry David Thoreau, and but anyway, all of my band members have passed away. So I'm the only living member of that band.
Walden
So
Pond.
that's part of what the Phantom Band is about. But it's also in honor of the Phantom jets that came in and I might swear, essentially saved our ass on August 11th, 1969 on Mudder's Ridge. We finally got some Phantom air support in, and just as an aside, the lieutenant ordered them to drop their load, and the Phantom jets didn't want to do it
Too close?
because we were too close to the enemy. I mean, they're right up on top of us and on high ground. And he said, if you don't drop your load, there won't be anybody left. And so they did, and it was like the earth. We got down in our holes, and the earth. I mean, it was like the most ungodly earthquake. I've been through a couple of earthquakes, and it was like the way the ground shook. It was just absolutely incredible. And we had people that were hit by so-called friendly shrapnel.
So that's where the Phantom part,
That's where the Phantom
band
part
part comes.
in.
And March 11th, we'll come back to August 11th.
Yeah.
But March 11th was your trial by fire, and you had just lost your best friend a week before. I guess you knew about that by that time.
Well, no, he was. Excuse me. We both got there in March.
Classmates at South.
Yeah,
right, enlisted together, basically.
yeah. I knew him since second grade. I moved away to California, but I came back for my sophomore year in high school, and I got in touch with him again. Yeah, he was a runner, and I was a runner, and he came out to watch this race, and I heard this, "Hey, Clark," because his whole family had this characteristic sort of a Massachusetts accent, and I look up and there's Brent. His name is Brent Thomas Masher, and so we got back together again, and then we ended up joining the Marine Corps right out of high school. We went in September 9th, 1968, and essentially we got separated in Vietnam, and I went to 3rd Marines up north, and then he went further south in 1st Marines, and I didn't find out that he was actually killed in May, and his birthday's May 15th, and he was killed on the 13th, so that was 2 days before his 19th birthday.
My birthday's May 15th.
Really?
Yeah, and let's see, on May 15th, 1968 was when he was killed.
69.
69. So on that day in 1969, I would have been playing baseball at Kentucky Southern College. The semester was over, and we had games to play. I was living in the dorm basically alone because I wasn't from there, and on my birthday, and basically getting ready to come home for the summer and work at Kennecott. You know, it's
mystical. And it's cyclical, and there's always, every time I talk to a guy like yourself, there's something like that connection that always happens. This isn't about me or Ron per se, but that kind of a coincidence is not unusual in my experience. I'm sorry I misspoke in terms of when Brent lost his life, but that was March 11th, and you were ambushed.
and
But let me curiously, why did you two enlist?
Well,
Were you fearing the draft, or do you patriotics, or?
Well, thanks for asking that, because I can vividly see in my mind. We were sitting at the McDonald's. It's back when it was no, not McDonald's. It was D's, right across from the courthouse.
yeah,
Remember
yeah,
that?
sure,
On 4th South.
yeah.
And we sat there, and we were soul friends. And as we all know, you know, when you're young, you think you're going to have a lot of people like that in your life, perhaps. But we were soul friends, and we even talked about, you know, the idea that we're going to go to college. What he wanted to do was he had some juvenile issues and so forth, trouble with the law. And he had to get that expunged in order to go in the Marine Corps. But anyway, the thing is that there was, God, one of the things he wanted to do was he wanted to become a sociologist or social worker, and he wanted to work with kids that were having problems.
Like he had, in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got thrown out of the house at 13.
One of the reasons you're here today is to talk about these very things. On all of the platforms, we are hearing people, politicians primarily, talking heads from the media that are well made up and they're all handsome and pretty, talking about the war we're in now. And it is a war, no matter what Trump's people want to say. We want to talk about it. This something that you went through and the people that you cared about went through, and that's what we want to bring home to the people that listen to this today. And that does it.
Yeah. And so to tag on to that, or to continue, going back to why we joined, we decided we were going to, I was going to go to college, and I wanted to go into journalism. And the idea, we're going to buy houses next to each other and and raise our families side by side, kind of thing. But one of the reasons that I don't remember him expressing exactly what his reason was, other than we were caught up in the patriotic spirit of the time, the domino theory. We bought into that we were going to protect the United States from the evil, godless communists and all of this stuff. But there were a couple of things that, for me, why I wanted to go, and one of them was that I followed the news a lot, and I saw things in Life magazine and various things like that had portraits of the Vietnamese villagers and so forth. And the big brother in me, it's kind of an American thing, wanted to protect those people. And I saw myself, and they portrayed this in a way, kind of in that movie with John Wayne.
The Green Berets.
Green Berets. Thank you. And Brent and I actually went to the drive-in and saw that together. And part of it was that big brother thing. I want to go protect those people. Because I wasn't big on war. I had learned a lot of anti-war songs. I played The Eve of Destruction by Barry
McGuire.
And the guy who wrote it was a 19-year-old P.F. Sloan. And
a great songwriter.
Yes, and then I played Buffy St. Marie's Universal Soldier, if there ever was a really great anti-war song, and then, of course, Bob Dylan's Blowing in the Wind. And then Where Are All the Flowers Gone? All of these things that were trying to inform us, and I had learned those and used to get teary-eyed with one of my friends I played with, and all of that. And then there's this cognitive dissonance, because you've got this cultural pull and influence about being patriotic. Now, there's another thing that was real important, and that is, and Brent shared this as well, and that is we also discussed, I remember now, we discussed this idea openly. We wanted to become men. We wanted to go through the rite of passage. We wanted to have more life experience and all of that. But also, in addition to that, how were we going? We didn't get scholarships to go to college. It was really a big factor was also going in the military and getting the GI benefits so we could go to college to actualize our dream. And
was that something that you knew just out of living, or had you gone to recruiters before that and talked to them about the GI benefits?
It just kind of heard it.
Yeah.
It's just more osmosis.
Couple of my friends that went to Vietnam, that was a big part of why they did it. I remember way back when, and that is because they wanted to go to either college or trade school, and they didn't come from any money, and it was their way of going. We'll serve our time, and we'll come back and we'll go to school. This idea of the patriotic idea, and you put it perfectly, this idea of big brothers in the brotherhood to protect the weak. That is something that has been sold historically to a lot of people. I was talking earlier to you guys about the Roman poet Horace, who actually fought.
Yeah.
He fought for Brutus in the Civil War. He supported Brutus, and then they got beat up pretty bad in a battle, and he ultimately went back to Rome. He was a middle class kid like us, lower middle class kid. His father was an auctioneer actually, but anyway, he wrote a famous ode that extolled the virtues of war, pro patria mea, my country, and that's been pushed out there for people to buy into. And at this point in our history, again, we've got a lot of that going on now. And so when you think back, how do you, we want to hear your story, but how do you reflect on this idea that we've got to go out and protect the world against evil?
Well, reflecting back, I just wanted to comment. I was a mortarman, 60 mortars, 60 Mike in Vietnam, and I remember being about 4 years old, and I went home. I pretty much, most of my life was independent. I was out playing in a field. This will crack you up. I dug a hole in the path that went through this field, and put water in it, and then I put newspaper over it, and then I covered that with dirt so people that were walking on it would step in it. It was only about this deep. But this is the kind of I actually blew up, seriously. Maybe 4.5 years old, I made a Molotov cocktail, and I blew up somebody's pigeon coop that stole my shovel. No shit. And they thought my brother did it, and they tied him to a tree, and they were beating him with sticks. And then I came down and I said, they were all afraid of my mother. She lifted weights and ran, and she's a beautiful woman, but she had this other side, this tough side. And all I had to do was mention, my mother's coming, and they left him, and I untied him and all of that. But the thing is, we watched all of these movies with John Wayne and Robert Mitchum, one of my heroes. It's like the manly man, I wanted to be like a Robert Mitchum kind of guy. But we were fed all of these things about the Iron Curtain as well. And it wasn't just about World War II and what the Nazis did, but then we heard about the Iron Curtain and all of this. And so we were in a lot of those movies growing up, and I just understood something as I was telling you this, and that is we were being programmed with the movies. It was, a lot of it was real, and we can understand why. We wanted patriotism and we the propaganda and all of that. But I was doing all of this anti-war stuff. But what happened was that, and this is an important thing, it's called the sleeper effect. I was exposed to all of these things when I was young. My unconscious mind, or our unconscious mind, which is the greater part of our consciousness, or unconsciousness. Our conscious mind is a drop of rain in the ocean of the unconscious, in my opinion. I buy into Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious as well. But the idea is I was programmed, and many of us were, in my age group, the so-called baby boomers, and then we in the late 60s, or no, God, what year would it be?
Middle 60s, maybe.
Yeah, middle 60s, when Dylan came out with Blowing in the Wind and all of that. Then all of a sudden we started being introduced to the counterculture and the anti-war kinds of things. And so what ended up happening was all of that previous conditioning overrode these new things that I was experimenting with and being introduced to culturologically. And so now I see how that worked. And that's why it's so important with what you were talking about. We have all of this going on where people are being pressured into just following the Orange Emperor down this road of death and destruction because it's patriotic. And we're once again at this place where we're inundated with propaganda, and people are being made to feel guilty for saying that they're anti-fascist. I have a hat that says Vietnam veteran and against fascism. Why is it that
That's okay.
Why is it that I fucking feel like I have to justify being against fascists? My father fought in World War II. He went through France, Belgium, and Germany, as did a lot of other fathers.
Well, it stuns me. We've talked about this, and maybe it's because we throw around the word fascism too much when it isn't appropriate, that we cannot look at what we're doing and look at the propaganda that is out there. When we were kids, again, we're the same age, basically. There was truth about what we were told about communism. No doubt about it. And there were overwhelming truths taught about Nazism. But what happened is, in the McCarthy era, we overstated the degree of it, but we bought into that. And it's fascinating what you say about the folk singers at that time that were so great. They were the ones that started along with the beat poets and like that got us there. And I feel this, and I didn't go to Vietnam. I went to college. I was lucky in many ways. But there was a great divide between us and our parents and our aunts and uncles and who had served in World War II and our cousins that went to Vietnam. Not a personal divide, but there was a intellectual and a conscious divide, a conscience divide about, I'm against this war. How do I talk about it to these people? And how do I talk about it to my friends who did enlist and stuff like that? And it was a battle that we have now. In our world today with all the platforms, we've got so many people telling us we've got to do this and we've got to support the troops. And then the other side too, it's got to be hard for people now to do as you do, go, I'm just against this. This is wrong. And it's wrong. Let's count the reasons why. So you fought that.
Yeah, and one of the things that occurred to me as you were saying that was it's something I think is important, and it's something it has to do with the difference between supporting your troops and supporting the war. I support the troops. Categorically, I support our troops. I'm a grunt. I will always be a fucking grunt. They're in my heart. They're in my soul. They're in my blood. They're in my fucking bones. But that doesn't mean that I necessarily have to support the wars like Iraq that they were sent to, or Vietnam, or Afghanistan. There's a difference. And this country did not learn that until, from my reckoning, all of a sudden, the Gulf War, after the Gulf War, Vietnam veterans were all of a sudden being told, who felt like they were black sheep, like they were outsiders, like they had committed some crime because they fought for their country. It was all of a sudden the country starts saying, thank you for your service.
That's. I know lots of guys what you just described, and that's for like their 20 years before that time. They got out in late 60s and 30 years. And in the Iraq War in the 1990s and 2000s, we're pretty quiet about it. Then all of a sudden, when we recognize we can't do this to our guys again,
right?
That's when you start to see the hats that said Vietnam veteran.
Right. That's a great point. That's a great point. So I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but you're exactly right.
We did it before then. Guys, not that they were hiding it, but they weren't overly, stalwart about it either, because they didn't know who the guy or woman, anybody, how they'd react to them, because they were so aghast at how they were treated when they came home. My brother tells me a story, when he got back, he well, I'm not going to tell a story, it's you, but like he about blew up at somebody, saying, baby killer and shit like that. So, and it was 66. So 30, 40 years later, he's wearing his hat, and so God bless him. But that was a tough thing that we put our classmates through, our friends.
Yeah,
and our country did that. I always was pals with them, but for me individually, I don't have a guilt thing. But it's like the poor bastards. Why are we doing that to them?
I would push back, not against what you said. I would push back against the idea that those of us that had friends that went to Vietnam and knew people that died in Vietnam ever were the ones that were out there calling them names or stuff, because we knew them. We continued to correspond them. I've told this story before. My friends told me, don't get kicked out of school. Don't come here.
Right.
Because we'll kill you.
Mine was the collective we, our society.
I know, but our society did. And the thing is, it's starting right now in America before we're even in a war for a month. That type of attitude is starting. Not about the soldiers individually, about that you've got to support it. You've got to do this. In point of fact, I think that what we've got to do is listen to people like you and your experiences in war, because they are seldom told except in documentaries after the wars are over. And what we want to do on this program is listen to you about your experience and what it's meant to you all these years later. Have we learned anything?
Well, I want to say something because I got a little bit wound up there. I want to be very clear that I really appreciate the fact that our general population in a very big way after the Gulf War, and then especially another turning point was the 9/11,
Right.
where this country came together and we started appreciating, our firemen, our
First
EMTs, all of this
responders,
stuff, people involved in that, but also our military. And recently I read something where somebody posted that they were one of the people that called the vets baby killers. They're the ones that put dog feces in bags and spit on people. But what she said is, I so much want to apologize, but please remember, we were kids too.
Sure.
And I went, you know what? That's right. And so we don't want to keep grinding that axe. But going back, one of the things that carries on after the war in terms of that attitude, the anti-war sentiment, and there was some insidious discrimination going on towards Vietnam vets. And I'd just like to share this quickly. I will not reveal the name of the company. But I went to this company. I was totally qualified. And at the time, I had been gained expertise in atomic absorption spectrometry. And you can analyze metals in water and blood and all of this other stuff. Well, anyway, I went to this company, and I was way qualified, and I hit it off with the lab manager. The owner wasn't there that day, so he interviewed me, and we went out for a walk, through the facility. Just hit it off splendidly. And he says, "Oh, just as a formality, I need to go over your resume." So I go back, and he sits down in the chair, and we had this real good vibe, between us. And he's going down my resume and looking at all of my, my work experience and nodding and kind of, yes. And then he gets down to the bottom. And I don't know where I got this, but my idea, and at the time a lot of people, you want to account for your time. And so I got this template for a resume, and I put my military experience.
Yeah, you can't ask that if you're an employer. You're not supposed to.
And so at that time, this was kind of common. We would put it, on our resume. He gets down to that, and it says, I was in the United States Marine Corps, 1968 through 1970, and all of that. And all of a sudden, his whole demeanor and deportment changes, and he looks at me, and he says, "So, how did it feel to kill innocent women and children in Vietnam?" Oh, well, he was thorough. The Republic of Vietnam. And I went, huh? I was kind of stunned and taken back. And I said, "Well, I gather you didn't serve in the military." And he said, "No, I went to Canada." And I thought about this. I had given a lot of these things thought, And so I thought about it, and so I said, I know that you didn't know that you were going to receive an amnesty, and that you were giving up everything, your family, your citizenship, to go to Canada. And I said, that was a moral choice. That was a profound moral choice. And that took a lot of bravery. But I would just hope that you wouldn't judge those who got drafted or who joined and fought in the war. And he says, "I don't." I said, "Well then, interview over."
I know a little bit. You were accused in that moment of being a baby killer.
Yeah.
Bombs land ominously all over the place in the battlefield, or in cities, as you know, a schoolyard in Tehran where 50 young children were killed.
Yeah.
So what they call it, it's not the facts of war. But I believe you have an example of when you were called upon to actually attack women and children. Can you describe what you went through on that day when you were...
Well, we had, it was just some parts of Vietnam were just breathtaking, incredible. I ran into hill tribes people living almost at the Stone Age level in paradise with waterfalls and tropical flowers, and they practice slash and burn horticulture like they do in South America, like the Yanomama and all of that. And our point man actually killed one of the elders, of that tribe. But on another note, we were in a place in Vietnam where it was just beautiful. And they had these beautiful hooches, water bowls, rice paddies, and just all this beautiful terracing of the hills and stuff. And we'd gone through there, and we had no indication that this sweet, beautiful little village, kind of like the village I had in my mind where I was going to go out and protect him, right?
Right.
And so this sergeant, I had left 3rd Marines where I've been in real heavy combat, and I went down to 1st Marines, and I was in 81 mortars now, and I was with this guy that was a sergeant, and he'd never been in combat. And he wanted us, our gun team, but I was the gunner, to set up our gun and fire on this village. It was a friendly village. We had received no intelligence of the enemy. Viet Cong were there. We had received no fire from this village, and he had received no orders from a superior officer for us to engage this village and destroy it. So I just flat out fucking told him. I said, I set the gun up. And I said, well, and I won't use his name. I'm not going to malign anybody. But Sergeant X, you drop the round down the tube, and pretty much it's going to land right in the middle of that hooch. We'll fire. And I said, I'm not firing on a friendly village. That's an illegal order, and I'm not going to follow it. So then he pointed to one of the other guys, and he says, I want you to fire. And so he ordered them to fire. Well, they lined up with me, and they refused to fire. He could have put the round down the tube.
He wanted somebody else to do it for him.
Thank you. That's exactly it.
And so when
distance from the responsibility.
When we hear people in the Trump administration and others that follow them talk about generals that fought in war and commanded troops in war who said that you have a right, you have an obligation really
Yes.
not to follow an illegal act from a superior officer. And Hegseth and what's your name, Levitt and Trump are saying how wrong they are. You're
Yes.
taught that. You're taught that. Even at the level, in a sense, don't take offense at this, the lowest level, the people that are shooting the guns and dropping the mortars, you understand that. Why is it in this day and age, after all we've been through in this country, where American soldiers have been taught that we have people in government today castigating people that say you are not supposed to follow directives that are illegal and you know them to be illegal? How are we here again now? Or how did we get here?
You know, that's a real important question, and the only one of the way I'm going to be a little circuitous in my answer. Joseph Campbell wrote, The Power of Myth, and he talks about the hero's journey. And I was talking to John before about the hero's journey, and one way of framing the experience, because when you've been through the war, you go through a black swan experience. Everything that you thought was real before, your values and all of this, all of a sudden are put to the test and are questioned. For example, in the theater of war, the rules change, and all of a sudden you're out there hunting another human being like an animal, and they're out there hunting you, and it's nasty business. But walking that tightrope, you also cannot forfeit your humanity. And one of the things that I learned about in the war experience, and there's a couple of them that are really important, and one of them ties in with our honoring the environment, and that is ironically, I experienced oneness with nature and the jungle. And part of it was out of adaptation, be able to read the signs of the jungle. But it was a living, breathing thing, and you could hear the insects crawl before you lost your hearing, which eventually happens. And you can differentiate between an animal and a human being trying to come through at night through the bushes and not making a sound, kind of thing. But the thing is that you become aware of that, and you also, even though you're in the Marine Corps, I'm going to just tell you flat out, I don't know what it's like now, but when I was in the Marine Corps, they knocked the shit out of us. Physically knocked the shit out of it. I had a sergeant walk by and slam my rifle into my face, and I started to shake, and my head was bleeding. And he said, "Private, what are you shaking for?" And always, to get out of trouble, you say, "Sir, the private doesn't know," right? And then he goes to walk away, and then when he goes to walk away, he backhands me, and he was wearing his Marine Corps ring, and he bloodied me. And at that point, I was holding my rifle at port arms. I let go with this hand, and I looked him right in the eye. And you never look your drill instructor in the eye. That's a no-no. I looked him in the eye, and at that point, that's it. he went too far. And I was going to hit him. And then he smiled at me and walked away. They beat you. They want to make you numb. They don't want you to think. It's do as I say and no questions. And part of this is where you see a butter bar or any officer, you that is really bred into you that you're to follow orders. But then you get this other training that you were talking about your general orders. And to be honest with you, at that time, I don't remember receiving a lot of instruction about not following unlawful orders. The reason I didn't, I knew that it was unlawful, but more than that, more than the law, it was immoral.
Right.
And this ties in with one of the problems that we have with vets coming home with PTSD, compounded by moral injury, compounded by survivor's guilt. Those three things really, really trash troops, and it doesn't matter which war we're talking about. We all go through that on some level and deal with it in different ways and all of that. But going back to what you were saying, I'm getting kind of off track here, but the idea is that you can't forfeit your humanity, and when you come back after this journey, part of the elixir, really, it's kind of quite simple, is that you were trained to objectify people in order to destroy, kill, and maim without conscience, really. Now I got to a point where I could do that. I could kill people. Trying to kill my friends, my fellow Marines, I'll fucking kill you. But to kill somebody cold-bloodedly is another story, like bombing the girls.
Or not caring if you're bombing the girls.
And now where I'm going with this is a total fucking loss of a sense of what we call humanity and civilization. Civilization, they want to say, they want to be the kind of neocons that they just see and this is why they like Trump. It's because he's transactional and what's good for America. There's no ethics involved. It's just what's good for America. America first. But it's the hell with the women and the children and all the people suffering in Gaza or in Ukraine.
They're just collateral damage, whatever.
Yeah, they use that euphemism, and that's part of us not confronting the moral and spiritual reality of war. It's one of the most fucking evil, atrocious things. And you cannot ever reduce somebody else to the status of an object. And I believe this. You cannot reduce another to the status of an object without reducing yourself first. The first sin is against your own soul.
That's right, and it's
awesome
so
to put it that way too.
Yeah, you then did indeed.
And then once you have that, and that's why we had a conversation earlier about the angel of death coming to me in a dream, and he said there are no signs of rebirth. At that time, I was a Christian, and I was into this onward Christian soldiers, but I had blood on my hands. The Greeks would call it the Furies chasing my ass. But I was sitting there thinking about the angel of death taking me, because I saw him, I looked in his eyes, and then going to hell, being taken down to hell because I had killed. Now some people want to differentiate and say, well, you were fighting for God and country. You're absolved of your sins. And I took enough philosophy and thought about this enough. Early on, I came to terms with the fact, no, existentially, I take responsibility for having joined. I told you why I joined. I have to take responsibility for my actions. And that's where we missed the boat. The people who sent us there should be taking responsibility. And when you say, how did we get here? This country did not take responsibility. The people that knew what was going on. Oh, because this leads into a whole other thing about the military-industrial complex and what's going on now with that, and arms sales and all these corporations making money off of it, and that's what Dick Cheney did with Halliburton in Iran. There's a lot of money made and a lot behind why we go to war, but we cover up the blood money.
The thing is, what you're also talking about, and again, philosophically and spiritually, religiously, is the debate, onward Christian soldier. Mark Twain, in 1905, wrote a really wonderful, it's a little story. It's called The War Prayer. And it's about that very thing. It's about and those out there, it's short and you can find it and read it because he's talking about the war, the United States war against Spain and Cuba and the Philippines, all of that. And so the story is set in a little church in an unknown place where they're going to war, and the preacher's up there and he's preaching about just that, onward Christian soldier, and we've got to win it for God and country and all this stuff. And a stranger comes in. Nobody knows who this guy is, and he gets up and he gives you the other side of the war. He gives you the little girls killed. Yeah. He gives you all this stuff. And at the end of it, everybody's silent. And then they turn on him. Who are you to tell us what we should do and about it, what we believe in? It goes to something that we never discuss anymore. Because it's hard to get there, and that St. Augustine of Hippo talks about the just war. Well, really, I disagree with Augustine. There's virtually no just war. I guess there are some that you can justify or excuse. But when it gets down to what you're talking about, I think a lot of us feel this way after a long time of being through this as kids. You know, again, you fought, I didn't. How are we still here? How do we get here? Why aren't there people at the UN dealing with this? That was the purpose of the UN. And so when you talk about your experience about that and how you think we've got here, from a different perspective, I think of a guy that just died this week, Joe McDonald.
Yeah, Country Joe.
I mean, and his Fixin' to Die Rag. What did you think about that as a Vietnam, that song?
Well, that when you bring it up, it first of all, I'd like to say, I worked at a job at the Terrace Ballroom, and we set up shows there for Country Joe, Moby Grape, Jefferson Airplane.
We're still waiting for Jefferson Airplane to land because they never showed up at that one of them. Because I was there waiting for them, and the airplane never landed.
And all of that, and I remember hearing that song live, and all of that, and of course he did it in Woodstock, and we were on Mutter's Ridge when Woodstock went down, and all of that. But it really, and I'm going back again to that thing where we can have cognitive dissonance. That song, even before I left, resonated with me, and yet I went. But the thing is, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, and that is in Vietnam, we had people that we would call lifers, what we call them, the guys that are going to be in there for life, and woohoo, and it's not just esprit de corps, it's this kind of this toxic masculinity that Hegseth is pushing in some ways. And I'm not saying we don't need that. We need to have a warrior ethos, but once again, it needs to be modified and tempered with some kind of philosophical background and ethics training as well.
That would make it non-toxic if we did that. Then it wouldn't be toxic masculinity. It would be just masculinity. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's good. But it is nuanced, and it's paradoxical in some ways. But the thing is that some of us, and I remember this on the Battle of Bigfoot Brown, and this was after March. This is in April, and I don't know the exact date. But we had another major battle, and the only thing that saved us was Puff. That's the one that has the miniguns that can hit every square inch of a football field in some real ridiculously short amount of time. And there were so many. Oh, we were fighting, by the way, not just the NVA, North Vietnamese regulars, because we rarely up north fought the Viet Cong, but we fought the North Vietnamese regulars. We also fought the Chinese. And I remember after that battle, we had thrown all of these beautiful, and I'm going to say it, these were young men, beautiful skin and washboard stomachs and beautiful black hair, and I'll never forget, we stripped them naked to search for documents, and then we took them by their hands and feet and threw them all in a mass grave in a bomb crater. And I remember seeing the spectacle, but I remember going, God, they're just young like us. And then you'd open up a wallet and find a picture of their family, and then all of a sudden they're humanized. These aren't just gooks, what we called them, which means foreigner. We were the foreigners, but we called them gooks and other things. But they weren't just gooks. They were human beings with people who cared and loved them. But I remember after we policed up the bodies and threw them in this big bomb crater, some of us got together. And that's why this is a very important day. And thank you for letting me say this. I remember we got together and we talked about how we were all young guys and we were being sent there by all of these politicians in the rear with the gear, the beer, and the women. And they couldn't care less if we died because we were competition for some of those beautiful round-eyed girls back home. But one of the things that we talked about was the idea on that day, and this is early on in Vietnam, this is April, and we talked about this, and we said, what are we going to do when we go back home? You know how they conned us with all of those movies and glorified war and all of this stuff, Robert Mitchum and John Wayne and are we going to go back and are we going to perpetuate the myth? Are we going to perpetuate the lie, or are we going to go home and we're going to tell them the truth about what's going on in war, what it does to you, and what you're doing to other people? In other words, the intrinsic immorality of war that's contrary to civilization. If we're going to evolve, and we have all of this fucking technology now, and when in fact, I'm going to go back to the man on the moon, when I was on ambush and sitting there going, how is it we can be putting a man on the moon tonight, or today, or whatever, and I'm sitting here waiting for somebody to walk in front of me, doing a very primitive fashion with these primitive weapons, change their health and dental record. That's just a nice euphemism for blow the fucking shit out of them, mutilate them, mangle their bodies with our bullets, or them do that to us. Because and that's the other part. How did we get here? There's a lot of people playing fucking video games, Call of Duty, shoot Renee Good in the face and call her a bitch. And then when they killed Preddy, the motherfucker had the audacity to fucking say, what did he say? Call of Duty. He said that.
Yeah.
It's a video game. Going back to our thing about dehumanization. We dehumanize one another all the time. It's not just the ICE officers or DHS. We're always in this culture and society, and in other cultures, they do it as well. We are dehumanizing one another. We're exploiting one another. It's built into the system.
And people make a lot of money off of it, and then they send somebody else to do the job for them. It's not only war and the video games. And I know John likes it, and I used to like it. It's WWII, where we got the good guys and the bad guys, and we don't have any nuance to it in this country.
Exactly.
And we talk about women's rights, and then on any Comcast program you get in the high channels, women are being used as playthings for other people, and that the hardcore pornography that we use that we don't want to talk about because our side is the left is the one that says we've got to do that. But people are making millions off of this, just like you were saying. But so here's the deal, and this is going to be a two-part program, John, because we haven't even really got to some of the meat that we wanted to do today. So how is it that you get back and you have the attitude that you do? How long did you come back with this attitude? Did it develop over a period of time?
Now, which attitude are you?
The attitude is someone that doesn't come back as a toxic male Robert Mitchum. That's not who you are.
Well, I have to give a little credit to somebody. Actually, lots of people, really lots of people. But it started in a way. The seed was planted in Vietnam, whereby I was with a Blackfoot Indian, and his name was John Jarrett. And he saved, John, if you're ever out there, if you're still alive, I love you and thank you for the life that you preserved. He saved my life more than once. He shot on Bigfoot Brown, he shot an enemy that had his rifle right in my face, ready to blow my head off. And he shot him first. I'd been knocked back by a concussion grenade, and I went numb, and I was out of it. And when I wake up, I got a rifle pointed in my face, and John shot him before he shot me. But anyway, John, after that battle, John made the comment, I could have killed a better man than me. And then he said, he was like Elias in Platoon. He was the philosophical one, and was way ahead of me in understanding the cultural, the sociological and cultural movements. And when I call it movement, it's like women's lib. And I was aware of civil rights, but he was into the LBGQT thing as well. All of that, and he talked about the Roman soldiers and their involvement in that kind of activity, and how they were some of the greatest warriors. But the thing is he was talking about the movement then, and so he kind of planted that seed about social justice and equality in me in the war. And then when I came home, I had the good fortune of meeting this existential phenomenological psychotherapist named Derek Ferguson. And I wasn't his patient. We'd met in a bar. And he gave me a lot of books to read. And what happened is I ended up reading a lot of French existentialism and took a lot of courses and so forth. But the existential philosophy was actually embedded in a lot of our vernacular in Vietnam. This is a good part I need to tell you real quickly. And what I mean by that. The idea is the French philosophy, it comes back to the personal responsibility for your actions. But it also dealing with the absurd and all of these other things. It gave me a way of framing the experience, because it is a fucking nightmare. And it's extremely fractionating to one's soul. And I even wrote a song where it goes, are you on your way back to you? Is your soul black and blue? I dealt with a lot with this in my music. So the lyrics, even though I could write upbeat melodies, but if you really listen to the lyrics, it's like, sing me a song, lay my spirit to rest. I dread a hopeless disease. The wind will blow my body apart, but I'm not afraid to leave. Life, sweet life, sing a song for me, please. Life, sweet life, sing a song for me, please. Because I'm down. I'm fucking down on my knees. Down on my knees in terms of my spirit. And I was broken, and I had to crawl. I had to fight my way back to what I would consider to be sanity. I fought very hard, and they wanted to give me medication, and they wanted to numb me out, and I took it, and it felt like lead going down through my body. And I went, I'm not feeling, okay. I'm just numbed out. Chemical straitjacket. And I said, fuck this. I went and dumped it in the toilet. And I said, you know what? This is the Marine in me. I'm going to fucking go out. I'm going to run. I'm going to lift weights. And I'm going to get strong, and my mind will follow. So I had the physical part, and then I had the psychological part, spiritual part I had to work on. But philosophy, education really helped me, especially in taking things in the humanities, so literature, philosophy, and theater, and all of that, before I became a scientist. And then I found out that science is a humanistic endeavor.
It is, yeah.
From the fellow who wrote The Ascent of Man, and Jacob Bernowski. And he talks about, and this kind of ties in with the whole thing, and where Jacob Bernowski says he lost his family in Auschwitz. And he was a famous mathematician, and he said, we can't allow the kind of dogmatism, I'll just say it, I'm paraphrasing, we can't allow the kind of dogmatism that reduces all of humankind to a regimen of ghosts. And he was, I'm visualizing all of those people that were killed in Auschwitz and places like that. And the thing is, once again, tying in with what's going on right now, how far are we away from that?
We're in it. We're Alligator Alley. We're
exactly.
There.
How far? Yeah, exactly. And it goes back to dehumanization and how we dehumanize one another, and the moral travesty of all of that. And I know I got really off track, and I don't even know where I was going.
I don't think you're
We're
off
not
track.
off track at all.
Today's path is that we are doing in Iran what happened to you in the field in Vietnam. when you dehumanized, or were taught to dehumanize the fellow across the trail from you, trying to kill you, you're trying to kill him. He had a word for you, you had a word for him. Gook is what they said then. There have been others who in every war it's the same, but we're doing the same thing now because the Iranians are not people, they're terrorists. And all of them are, apparently, because that's what we're trying to sell from the top down, that these people don't deserve to live. Yeah. If they live, they'll just kill our neighbors because they are awful people. They're terrorists, and they can't be allowed to have these things. Yes. So let's go bomb them. So in your, I know we got to go soon, but in your experience, like Mark Kelly is the one that said it's okay to disobey orders, and he was quickly found to, tried to get him a congressional in front of Congress and derank him and all that kind of stuff. And so far, with not a lot of penalty to Hegseth or the Trump administration to keep on doing these kinds of things to people who have an ethical core and a moral core like you do. Do you think Hegseth has any kind of moral code or moral core? You did say in a way that his toxic masculinity isn't the worst of his traits, but
exactly, because I really do believe that. Number one, before I go there, I'm just going to say I do think that he is behind this white supremacist, white nationalist, apocalyptic
rationale
worldview.
Yeah.
Not just based on his tattoos, okay? I'm not that superficial, but based on what he says. And I paid attention to what he says. Not what somebody says he says. I've listened to what he says. And it's like, oh, really? And in his sense of what he thinks is a warrior ethos. And he wants to totally remove ethics from the military and all of that, but also he's part of that movement that wants to take us back before women's suffrage, and they want women back in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant, and what he doesn't know, I think he's totally unqualified. First of all, and show me. I'd like somebody to show me how he is qualified, but the thing is he wants to take us back and put women back in the kitchen and all of this, and undo. Also, he's part of that group that wants to undo the civil rights. Where there was this one podcaster that was quite famous, and he said that the Civil Rights Act was was a really horrible thing and all of that. There are people that still buy into that, and once again, that's not only dehumanizing, but we're buying into a racial mythology, and might makes right, and so. You would think at this point we would have learned from the Nazis the fallacy of racism, and I have to bring this up because I have a background in genetics and evolution, and that is what we learned from the human genome is that race is myth, race is myth. And I want to make sure I get that out there. And if you go back and you look at your DNA, and if you go back far enough, you're going to find an ancestral population in Africa. We come out of Africa, and all of that. But the thing is what I learned early in life in 6th grade. My 6th grade teacher taught us about the family of humankind. And what was the guy that wrote Erich Fromm?
Yeah,
he was big on the concept of the human family. And I'm an anthropologist.
And we're still learning things too.
Yeah, we're always learning things. And the thing is when I look at I'm getting kind of scattered, but where I'm going with this is the concept. Let's look at women in combat. If you go back and you look at what happened in World War II, and you look at the French resistance, and you look at the women that were spies, and some of them parachuting out of fucking planes and killing Nazis. You want to tell me they can't vote? I mean, there's a lot of stories about the women that were in combat in various levels.
Sure.
In fact, in the resistance, there was a woman, her name was Simone Weil. It's spelled with a W, but it's with a V, Simone Weil. And she actually went and worked in a French automobile factory so she could learn what it was like for the common laborer, because she was into fighting for the unions.
No, she was a great philosopher. I mean, she was Jewish. She
Yeah.
was brought up in a strict Jewish family and went and studied philosophy in France and then taught. And then as they progressed through World War I into the problems with fascism in Italy and in Germany, she decided that she would give up all of her hard work, in a sense. I'm oversimplifying, and she would go into part of it was called the priest worker movement. She was going to go in that. She was looking at religion and philosophy and wanted to relate to a group of people, working people, that she hadn't lived. She hadn't lived that life. And her writings, you want to read some great stuff, and some of it can be tough, but she was just brilliant in trying to bring, just as you have today, the idea of philosophy, the philosophy of man, down to common daily existence. And that's really what she did. She's a great story. Yeah.
Absolutely, and the thing is, she didn't have really good vision, and so in a way, I guess you could say that she had maybe not quite Coke bottle lenses, but because of that, she was smart. She wanted to be a machine gunner, and just quickly, there were a couple of machine gunners I knew that had Coke bottle lenses, and they were badass machine. No, there were 3 of them that had Coke bottle lenses. And I'm like, God, that's curious. But these guys were badass machine gunners. That's all I'm going to say.
So let's wind up a little bit. So if you had something to say from your experience, you told just a green sergeant, nope, I'm not going to do it. So you know the difference between right and wrong, and I have a moral core, and I'm not going to do an illegal act. And you've been through every trench. If you were listening here and you have read a book by Karl Marlantes, is his name. It's called, I think it's just Mutter's Ridge is the name of the book. No, wait, it's not. But it's the Matterhorn.
It's suspicious. It covers. He was in the same area of operation.
Yeah, so you could read about that. That's where Clark was. Robert Mueller, we've said before, was in the Bush administration. And then he was the Mueller report. Was at Mutter's Ridge. I don't think it was 69 at Monte, because that ridge had been fought over several times. Yeah. But he was later wounded, and he was there. You can get an idea of Clark's experiences. So given just the war experience, what you went through in the war, what would you say to a Hegseth today? If he was, would you have a heart, the core of you would say, he's my leader, do what the leadership says. But what would you really say or feel?
Okay, I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of getting a little ahead of something here. My mind is kind of rolling, thinking about that. But I am going to say this. Before we came here, I told you about the Gold Star section of the cemetery, and how I actually was outraged, where I saw a whole row of the headstone that had just been knocked over, broken at the base.
That's just recently.
Yeah, and all of that, and that just really upset me on some level. But here's the thing: going back to that thing about not following the unlawful order. One thing to remember: I had come from the 3rd Marines up in I Corps. Our unit was, for all intents and purposes, practically wiped out. And on the one hill that they went hand to hand. We almost went hand to hand. It was really quite gruesome. And the thing is that I will always be that 3rd Marine, even though I was in 1st Marines, and bless the 1st Marines, Guadalcanal and all that. Nothing to take away from them. I honor them as well. But I will always be a 3rd Marine. I will always be a member of Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marine Division. And if I were to follow an unlawful order and fire on a friendly village that's sleeping, I would have dishonored all of those men that died there.
By virtue, they dishonored their
That's
fellow
not
Marines.
It's not a esprit de corps to murder innocent
No.
people. I am no fucking Lieutenant Calley. And what I see in terms of what Hegseth is doing is promoting not a warrior ethos, but an unconscionable, immoral,
I do agree with you.
whatever you want to call it. And it's anathema to me. And that's all I can say.
Yeah.
That's all I can really say.
So let's just summarize it with there. remember. What's a word we can end with? Remembrance. You remembering today's a big day for you? That's the day you first were tested under fire, the ambush day.
I hope you'll come back and tell us that story about that if we can.
Yeah, I mean, these aren't difficult stories for fellas like Clark to talk about, but they're important stories. I do know you believe this, that we hear, because for so long we don't hear them. And so many people just choose to watch the reels of our youth, the Robert Mitchum movies and the John Wayne movies, or watching the snippets we get on TV news and so on, and not feel, touch, or hear the pain that is really behind it. Because if the 3rd Marines or 1st Marines had broken on those days and honored their commander's order to commit an unwarranted, unlawful act, there's no hope for the rest of us. So my sense is men like you that held that line should motivate the rest of us to hold that line as well and be equally moral in our time. We cannot let fellas like you, young people that are there now, go through that and not know that they must know that, yes, they can be honorable, and yes, they can serve their country, and yes, we can do what's right by our country. But at times, those people calling the shots, the Hegseths and the Trumps, who suddenly today doesn't even know that there was a school. This is bullshit. And turning their back on morality and ethos and ethic and the entirety of world history and humanity. You guys held the line. We can't forget that you held that line, because we're not here holding the line, because we're watching bullshit on TV and arguing about who is right or wrong on some different level. And on the core level, people died. And families are hurt on both sides. And nobody's holding that ethical line up on top, because they're all fearful of what Ron said, pay the consequence financially or pay the consequence politically, not with your life. And you held your ground. And it's shyness about saying this. You are the man in this room, and you have a history of standing up and being passionate for what you believe in. And my hat's off to you, Clark.
Well, thank you. I just see that I'm still becoming, is the way I see it, and I have a long ways to go to be. And I want to say this, and I'm in all sincerity, and that is, my best friend died 2 days before his 19th birthday, and in many ways he knew more about life. And I'm not trying to lionize him here either. And not only him, but other people I serve with that were better Marines and more of a man than I am or ever will be. But the thing is that I like to, in closing, that I would like to remind people of, it's not just the folks here at home that have lost family members that fought in these wars, but when we stop to think about the psycho-spiritual harm that we're doing in Iran, the trauma to the younger generations that do survive. If our own vets at this time, and I belong to certain veterans groups, and I see people that are they'll break down and they're still upset about their experience. They suffer from survivor's guilt, moral injury, and PTSD, and how the country treated them. Well, if we stop and think about, well, if we're still suffering trauma after all these years, especially some of the folks that develop late onset PTSD after they retire and they're no longer addicted to their job or following something like that to keep them distracted, and then they have to deal with it, and they're on their way back to themselves, and their souls are black and blue. When we think about all of the intergenerational trauma that's being created, how is this ever going to be conducive to obtaining? And I mean, we may, they can call it all they want, well, it's in our nature and all of this stuff, to be warlike and to kill each other and be aggressive. But how are we ever going to really obtain a level of civilization with all of this advanced technology that we have and AI and everything, where we earn, anthropologically speaking, we're Homo sapien sapien. That means wise man. When are we going to earn that second sapien?
Well, look,
we haven't earned it yet.
We may have what you said is that's innate amongst us, but what is not innate is forgetting or being passive about it. When we walked into Iran a couple days right around that time or later, our president said, well, we'll probably lose some guys, but that's the way it goes in war, I think. Something like that. And
Exactly.
I go, are you kidding me?
Right.
Are you not, you ever heard of, do you know who Ulysses S. Grant is, or anybody, Dwight D. Eisenhower, who mourned and cried at the end of World War II when he went to the gravesite and said, this is the penalty we pay, and he's sobbing as a United States president and a former general.
Grant in his memoirs talks about how terrible he felt.
And now we got a guy there that just is like passive about, if it happens, it happens, whatever.
He's the same guy who said, standing on a grave overlooking Belleau Wood, I don't get it. What was in it for them?
Exactly.
So how can we expect anything out of them? We've got to expect it out of ourselves.
That's why I said
We've got to
regarding
expect it out of
guys
ourselves.
like Clark stood and did the right thing.
and that
Need
river,
to be remembered.
that river, by the way, was renamed by the French as the Marine Brigade River
Yes.
Yeah.
in honor of the Marines
Yeah.
that valiantly fought there.
Belleau Wood.
So the word, Ron, do you have a Latin, Italian word for remember?
Memorare.
Okay. I don't even know your background. Are you Irish or you Scottish or what are you? You're anthropology. What are you?
I had my ancient DNA done. I'm a Pict.
A Pict.
Oh, really? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Pick one? What does that mean?
A Pict.
Oh, Pitt.
P-I-C-T.
Pict.
A
Yeah.
Pict. That's an Anglo Saxon kind of group. It's from that area.
Kind of pre-Celtic.
really?
Pre-Celtic. Yeah, it is.
Oh,
And
then you're a Greek. So our word is
that's great. So Boudica, the great
Yeah. Yeah. The warrior
woman.
Yeah.
She was considered to be Anglo-Saxon. Some called her a Celt.
Yeah.
But she really was Welsh, as I recall. And so the Welsh and the Picts and they're together, the Isle of Man and all of that has to do with your history.
My mother was, her side of the family was Welsh, but I'm Irish, Scottish, Welsh, and English. I've been kind of pushing off the English. I shouldn't do that. I need to embrace
You're
my
British
English,
Islands.
and all of that. But I also found out that I have Scandinavian or Scandinavian and Norwegian. As well, you find that out, from that ancestry DNA thing.
Well, the Greek word for remember is mnemi.
Okay.
And so in your case, if someone passes, not your case, but the friends of yours in a Greek funeral, they say Aeonia mnemi. I always get it wrong because it's an M and N. It's hard to say. Mnemi.
Well,
May their memory be eternal. But the word mnemi is where we get the word mnemonics.
Mnemonics,
right,
yeah.
So like when every good boy does fine or whatever, that's a mnemonic device. Or Holmes,
Right.
remembering the Great Lakes. Huron, Ontario, Michigan. How do you spell Holmes? Erie and Superior. Those are mnemonic devices.
Right.
And so there you go. The word mnemi.
Okay.
Mnemi.
Well, in closing,
Remembrance.
raise your hand if your relatives came to Ellis Island.
Yeah.
Bill.
No idea.
He's native. He's
All right, for the
He's
audience out there,
indigenous. There were three hands that went in the air.
that we've tortured. At least three of us raised our hand.
Well, the only Welsh person I ever talked to or ever knew for about 3 minutes was Tom Jones.
Oh yeah.
I had an interview with him
Oh,
years
did you
ago.
really?
Yeah, I interviewed Tom Jones. Hooray. But I did.
Who's still alive?
Yeah, and he's singing pretty good. And bluesy. He's gone into the real blues genre.
Oh, he is great. And
Or
I
partially.
remember when he sang with Janis Joplin. He was a gentleman.
He was, and you
He
read
was so
about
nice
him.
to be on the. He was cool.
So we're going to end with Tom Jones. How the hell we got here, I don't know. That'll bring it to an
It's the
end.
Welshness.
Yeah.
Well, there were Welsh miners here in Utah.
Yeah,
so they were hard rock miners.
This has been great, but I just really don't think we're done. I think we've got to go back and get to where we were going to start this, which was we did with March 11th a little bit, but then go to the battle that John wants to talk about that has been written about quite a bit, and we think we should do it and maybe try it next week or whenever we can do it, because I think it's important. Personally, I just think it's important that we hear the voices of people who are warriors, and the people that are warriors are not Pete Hegseth, no matter how much he wants to portray himself as such. The people that are warriors come home and this is history. Read the World War I poets. They come home with a different view of dying for your country than those who have spoken about the glory of dying for your country.
Read Red Badge of Courage. You don't have to go. You just keep on going and going and going.
What's that?
Read the Red Badge of Courage.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.